You're a 5-year-old kid who just finished running around the cockroach-infested halls of your childhood apartment. Your grandma is on the verge of an aneurysm because you just won't stop screaming or running around the house. And your big brother takes matters into his own hands. He plucks you by the head, drags you across a cheap green carpet that reeked of mold, and plops you in front of the TV cabinet. I fidgeted in place, thumbing the ear of my green rabbit plush, as my eyes followed my brother while he punched in the channel numbers for Cartoon Network. Numbers I would memorize like a prayer. In a blink, the words Toonami were emblazoned on the static-laden screen, but I could feel this was different. The logo was bold, sharp, painted in black and white. A small alien robot man thing with a smooth voice welcomed me aboard his spaceship. My fingers stayed on the cheap polyester of my rabbit. My eyes stilled on the image of a man in orange, with black hair like blades. I think I sat there for 22 minutes, but it felt like a second. Just like how falling in love feels. I can't see. I found out Akira Toriyama passed when my friend had sent me a Twitter post. It wasn't that I didn't believe him or anything, it's just that I was in disbelief. I started to mull over the legitimacy of the post he had sent me, and it's not like I don't trust my friend. I just didn't trust reality in that moment. Toriyama, because I can't put it into words any other way, was like the cool yet distant uncle who was never really around, but he was always there, so to speak. And then you get the news that he suddenly passed away. I don't think I'd be the first to say that I expected to see Toriyama when he's an old wrinkly man like Hayao Miyazaki, who refuses to retire. His reach was akin to God, sculpting the layout of a new world. If that world were anime, his fingerprints visible in the earth, the rivers, the skies. At least, that's how it was in my world. The more I stay up on a sleepless night, the more I talk about my favorite moments from DBZ with close friends. The more I realize Piccolo was the early blueprint for my ideal man. Just kidding, not really. I realized that the common thing we all shared was that DBZ wasn't our favorite anime. You won't find it anywhere near my anime 3x3, for example. DBZ was, in no uncertain terms, the sampler for millennials who didn't know that there existed an entire culture and artistic medium outside of the tiny confines of North American television. From there on, Dragon Ball Z was my god, my religion, my lord, my savior. I prayed at the altar of Toonami every weekday at 5:30 p.m., a quiet grace washing over our dingy apartment for 22 minutes, while I sat fixated in front of the chunky TV. I didn't know what the my brother dealed me, but I'd like a second serving of this crap, please. I went to school the next day, incoherently babbling about how there's a race of humanoid monkeys on Earth, gesticulating the energy blasts that were projected out of their hands. I've seen cartoons, I know what they look like. I've seen Ed and Eddie, Johnny Bravo, Powerpuff Girls, so what the is that? In the back of my mind, a seed was planted. I began to reach for paper and pencil. I was a professional doodler, give me crayons or markers and I'll go to town, but I learned that there were doodles that counted as art, and art is what I needed to learn if I wanted to make anything like DBZ. With pencil to paper, I set out on capturing the razor-sharp lines of Goku's biceps, the intensity of his 1,000-yard stare when he's locked into a fight. What I made looked like Goku on a budget. And thank God I don't have those drawings, they're lost to time. The taste of failure was bitter, but the prospect of actualizing my vision was too sweet. I pursued the possibility of making a one-to-one copy of Goku. 5:30 p.m. Every night, every pencil stroke was a small step in a long chase for the chance of capturing what was before me and what could only be seen frolicking inside my mind. What I didn't expect was how this hunt would become a lifelong adventure, discarded papers and eraser dust dotting the trail like footsteps. Dragon Ball Z is a sequel anime series to Dragon Ball, a battle shonen manga released in 1984 that was created by Akira Toriyama. The Z was just to differentiate the new series from Dragon Ball since it adapted like the last 325 chapters. Dragon Ball was a charming take on Journey to the West, a seminal Chinese epic. Goku, our protagonist, was greatly inspired by Sun Wukong, and he starts out as an adorable child obsessed with martial arts and becoming the strongest fighter. Dragon Ball Z signaled a shift towards more combat-driven plotlines and the shocking inclusion of alien species threatening to destroy Earth. And if you were like me, Dragon Ball Z would have been your introduction to the series. I didn't see Dragon Ball until Toonami started airing the Funimation dub in the early 2000s, and although all of Dragon Ball is Toriyama's most popular work, it would be shameful to forget his other works that that demonstrate his creative genius. However, prior to Dragon Ball, Toriyama had finished serializing what was then his most popular work, Dr. Slump, a cute and charming comedy about the adventurous exploits of a pervy professor and his robot creation, Arale. Dr. Slump's existence was virtually non-existent in North America, especially when compared to the titan grip of DBZ. DBZ was bloody, violent, a glorification of the masculine pursuit of settling arguments with nothing but fist and gumption. It was a personification of what I could only call Toonami's attempt at edgy branding, not Nickelodeon edgy.
What you have done has made God very unhappy.
Cartoon Network was the kindergarten teacher with its fluffy programming of child-friendly Y7 cartoons made for the family. Toonami was more like the cool dad who took you out to see a rated R movie, uttering the words that every child wants to hear. Don't tell your mother. It was my first brush with blood, overtly sexual innuendos, serious topics in animation, and an introduction to a bevy of recurring story motifs or tropes, as I would later learn they're called. Dragon Ball Z would eventually lead to Sailor Moon, which would lead to Gundam G, which would then lead to Ronin Warriors, or legendary armored samurai troopers if you want to be granular, and Rurouni Kenshin, and then my eventual attempt to get into One Piece, but I realized I didn't want to spend 60 episodes trying something out to reach the conclusion of whether or not I like it. And if you couldn't find anime, God rest your fucking soul, especially if it wasn't carried on the Sci-Fi Channel or Cartoon Network. Finding anime back then was like a treasure hunt that you were ill-equipped for. If you weren't Indiana Jones, all you were was an underpaid archaeologist with a broken fork to do your excavation. I used to peruse the dusty-ass VHS stores for incomplete tapes of Dragon Ball Z, and a lot of times they were poorly translated with those ugly-ass yellow subs, or they were raw, so they were basically untranslated in Japanese. But seeing as how I was thirsty for whatever content I could get my hands on, I didn't really care at the time. Meanwhile, you fucking kids over here are privileged with your Crunchyroll, High Dive, your Ooh! If this is truly a safe space, then you better shut the fuck up for what I'm about to tell you right now. I made anime my personality. Let me explain. And when I was done with them, I'd rewatch them from the beginning, rinse and repeat. But oh boy, when I found out season breaks existed, I learned what true suffering was. I had nothing to quell the desert of content, and it felt like ticks dug their way into my brain. It even took me a while to realize what I was watching was called anime.
This ain't no Mickey Mouse.
A visual import from Japan, a country I had only known as one of the other Asians. So when I looked up what this anime thing was, I realized there were things called manga, like black and white anime in the form of books. I could pretend to be literate, win-win. And after discovering this manga and anime thing, I began to develop my own sense of taste, be it good or bad. In due time, I learned that anime also had genres, just like the movies I grew up watching. My internet journey was dotted with embarrassing forays into anime social media, like Gaia Online. Don't f with me and my senior Saturday's discount, that shit goes hard. Tripping into DeviantArt, discovering manga scanlations, discovering doujinshi scanlations, and of course, my first flirtation with modern fandom. I had friends, I had bullies, which often outnumbered the friends, but I guess it built character. I was that sad little shit sitting in the corner of 7th grade English with my USB MP3 player, bumping Thank You by Homemade Kazoku. Whenever I wasn't paying attention during 7th grade social studies, I was drawing my OCs with those awful skyscraper eyes. And if I was in the mood for reading, I'd go to my school library and check out a copy of Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. The manga version. And none of this would be possible were it not for those 22 minutes that changed my life. The bone-shaking awe of seeing Goku become a folk hero when he went Super Saiyan for the first time while fighting Frieza on Namek. Witnessing the amalgamation of Gohan's efforts as he blasted Perfect Cell with the spirit of Goku by his side. The earth-shattering revelation of Goku's true alien heritage and Piccolo in this fit! And as much as I can make out the marks left behind by my actions, I also see Toriyama's own marks beside them, as much as I've tried to deny it. Now, during this time, I will have to admit I started to think Dragon Ball Z was child's play. Like, I saw Full Metal Alchemist and thought it was the peak of storytelling and thought DBZ was some uneducated drivel. Maybe Vicky didn't want naked screaming men, but she does now. She wanted tearjerkers grabbing her by the ovaries. It bled into my art too, because now I was the serious artiste who started studying realism so people could really take her art seriously, when really it was more like undiagnosed depression, but okay.
I'm ready. Deep depression.
Then suddenly, anime wasn't cool anymore. It was that vulgar side of animation, the one filled with big-titted fan service, incest, lollies, shotas, so it lost all luster. And this carried into high school. I was president of the art club, and I rode this smug little train straight to college and then right into the ground. All it took was one 3-hour session of roasting my art to a crisp, like a bunch of monkeys slinging shit at me with a smile on my face. College taught me that to simply enjoy the crafting of art wasn't enough, and if anything, it was a childish notion that had to be discarded of immediately. The marrow of good art, rather, is actualizing intention, which is some big bull if you're not training people on how they're supposed to actualize that intention. So if you're not teaching them the basic foundations of what goes into good art, then they're basically screwed, but that's neither here nor there. And God bless your soul if you deal in a medium that was not approved by the art hegemony. I was prescribed the pill to rid myself of any sentiment for fan art because it was considered low. Whereas original works, serious and enthralling depictions of the deepest parts of the human psyche, were considered high and therefore worthy of praise. Abandon all flowery attachment to the anime that you grew up with. Art professors would sooner break your back on their knees rather than see you draw skyscraper-sized eyes. I was taught that taking my chisel to stone to birth the face of my imagination wasn't enough. You were the childish one if you believed that was more important than extolling on the importance of brutalist architecture and how it is a commentary on capitalism. Now I can say that I appreciate that education to a degree, but I have to admit that I almost gave up on art because of this. It drained me. I was drowning. I was scared of drawing. If I'm not good at the technical aspects of creating art, like line weight, values, then why am I still here? What is the point of an artist if they can't create? One would argue that you're better off dead if you're an artist who can't create. But I didn't want to say goodbye. I reconnected with anime and I began to rewatch my favorite titles. I still tear up when I see Ed getting dragged through the door of truth, glaring with conviction as he screams how he'll get Al's body back. The romantic in me swoons whenever Shiso kicks in during the final chase scene in Oran. I decided to rewatch the original cut of DBZ. Eventually. Not Kai, not abridged, the original Funimation cut. I was feeling nostalgic, and I just finished rewatching Sailor Moon, Sans Sailor Stars. I was due for a watch, considering how little I remembered of the show outside of pop culture discussions for me. Somehow, a show that had taken up 22 minutes of my day every day was missing significant chunks. So around 2022, before Funimation got wiped off the face of the planet, I rewatched the original cut of DBZ. This show is so thoroughly riddled with plot holes that Swiss cheese is more opaque. Much of what made DBZ great is considered outdated or cheesy and is consequently worth more as an introduction to bigger and better things. You could even argue that much of DBZ's praise is blurred by nostalgia when we look at how blindly dedicated its fan base is. Goku can't beat cancer, but he can beat this meat. I still had a lot of fun. DBZ is a lot like a late night Jack in the Box run with your friends nibbling on curly fries on the way home. Yeah, I love Frieren. I love Mob Psycho 100. I love Fullmetal Alchemist. I love Ranking of Kings, Beastars, Nana, Saint Street. But I can't call any of them fixtures, the same way I can DBZ. So as I wrapped my rewatch, I wasn't filled with the same excitement I had as a child, nor did I feel the same heartbreak when finishing up an episode. It felt like opening up a page of my notebook from my childhood that I hadn't seen in years. Still, in the year 2024, a long 40 years from 1984, I look at a picture of Goku dripped out in a jacket, riding on the back of a dinosaur with weapons, and I can't help but smile. I always come back to the art. We touched on it briefly. Whoa. Pirate movies. But the way Toriyama sees the world is very cute yet dynamic. Technology in Toriyama's hands resembles more of a quadruped beetle than a sharp hunk of doom metal. But even when he does draw more traditional vehicles, Toriyama renders the painstaking details of overlapping metal parts, nuts, bolts, and all. He somehow avoids making vehicles look inorganic or stiff by adding asymmetrical elements to the silhouette of the chassis. And this even applies to his inventive take on sci-fi machinery too. Whereas Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica preferred gray behemoths shaped like pizzas or Wi-Fi modems, Toriyama thought flying aircrafts of the future should look more like the motorcycle sidecars of yesteryear. In a sense, he gave retro cars and bikes a futuristic upgrade while still retaining the smooth slopes that make them resemble toys. And instead of grays, blacks, or silvers, Toriyama opted for the colors you'd see during spring or summer, like green, red, yellow, and blue. The world is a grand adventure devoid of pain or suffering. And even if there is, you're riding a fucking dragon or a dinosaur, and your best friends have bazookas, Gatling guns, pistols, and shit. Toriyama even makes characters pop up on plain backgrounds, be it white or a solid color. There's a fluid transition from limb to limb, exemplifying his innate understanding of proportions that are boosted by his bright colors and gentle pen strokes. They're always dripped out too. I love the trend among manga and anime artists where they draw their original characters doing cool shit while wearing costumes they usually never wear. You guys already know I've never read Dr. Slump, but I adore this piece of Arale riding on the back of a Bulbasaur dragon bedecked in silver armor straight out of Dragon Quest, with a little bird friend in tow. The execution itself is immaculate with the way the metal gleams and how the scales pop up from her friend's rough skin. Arale looks so serious. I can't get enough of this picture. It's all set on top of a black tile framed with gold, like an entry out of a bestiary. And then there's that one picture of the boys cosplaying as Journey to the West characters. It's so good. I was so happy when I found out they made a figure of this version of Goku that I actually bought this for my brother for his Christmas present. I think I know why Toriyama never gave up. He kept drawing the things he loved, all on his own terms. Like, yeah, he still had to deal with the crunch that came with a mangaka's lifestyle, but he knew exactly what he wanted to draw. Cute girls with soft limbs and purple or blue hair, friends going on joyrides and toaster-looking cars with giant guns, little kids hanging out with dinosaurs that somehow exist in the modern era. There isn't really any world building or canonical logic for why these things exist, or why they're the center of attention. Joy should be left unexplained, and I think that's beautiful. Joy. I think that's it. I think that's what kept Toriyama going. Is DBZ formulaic and just shonen schlock that lacks depth beyond the powers of friendship and might makes right? It's something goofy I internalize by now, that it's okay to write characters having fun with each other, doing goofy shit even if there's a cataclysmic event on the horizon. I've also internalized that I need to do a better job in writing women, cause ouch. I think this is what they mean by warts and all. Toriyama is an amazing draftsman, even though he isn't the perfect writer. Toriyama has an eye for composition, even though he has created one of the most infamous MacGuffins. You can spend an eternity putting all of Toriyama's flaws on a corkboard, but to what end? I've long abandoned that mentality, not only for my own happiness, but also because I think that can dampen the conversation between us and art. Yes, you should have a critical eye. Yes, media literacy is important, but it's also important to sit back and suspend your disbelief, even if it's only for 22 minutes. I've spent a better part of my life being bitter when I could have chosen to have fun like Toriyama, the man who unknowingly buried his claws into the darkest corners of my mind, its influence still palpable from the fingernails alone. I'm no longer that naive, starry-eyed child, but I am the withered woman who yearns for a softer world. A world I get a glimpse of whenever I watch this filler episode of Goku spending time with Gohan before their big showdown with Cell. Even the man himself is a joke. This fucking goober stopped drawing because he lost his pen holder. I can't really be surprised though, because this is the same guy who gave Saiyan's blonde hair to save on ink. The longer I sit here and babble, the more I realize I cannot escape this man's clutches. If I wanted to play a JRPG, I remember how Toriyama did the character designs for seminal titles like Chrono Trigger, Dragon Quest, and we can even throw in Tobal 1 and 2, even though they're not considered RPGs. And then when I'm done thinking about that, I think about the cute dedication he made to his kids at the end of Chrono Trigger. And maybe I'm not in the mood to play games. Say, I was in the mood to watch a show, maybe something animated. Let's say Avatar. Wait. I walk with the steps of a person whose life was indelibly touched by the hands of Toriyama, as much as I have tried to grow past it. Throughout the points in my life where I walked with heavy shoulders, I looked for refuge in the medium that always brought me happiness. These people were like me. They were a kid hell-bent on getting their f***ass doodle of Goku to look good. Unlike the other kids, however, they made it their life's mission to make good art. It's a lot, having a mirror held up to you. I'd start to see different people, individuals I'll never meet, who have these same shards of love embedded into them. I see the children in another country far away, seated in front of a clunky metal box of a TV. Their eyes glitter, their mouths break into that all too familiar smile. And this, I believe, in no uncertain terms, is the reason why Akira Toriyama changed my life. and so many others. Everywhere I turn, I see the ripples of Toriyama's legacy. A legacy of love. I see entire countries captivated by a tale as simple as a little boy who wanted to be the strongest. Athletes who believed they could make their dreams come true by tapping into their innermost strength. A couple of idiots on the internet banding together to create the oddest meme I've seen in years. A legacy that gave people the spark of excitement they needed to push themselves towards their dreams. And I was reinvigorated by that same little fire. I'm not the artist I hoped I'd be, but I am closer to being that Vicky. I don't like my current art that much, but I think about what it could be whenever I see this image. And when I ask myself if I've changed, I can at least say yes, no matter how microscopic the steps are. All because of some kid with a monkey tail and a man with a dream. I'm sorry if that got heavy in some parts. I cannot deny the parts of me that have been touched and changed by Dragon Ball and DBZ, and since everyone was making these touching dedications to Toriyama, it'd be wrong of me to not get my piece out and feed the algorithm. But enough about me. If you're a fan of DBZ, what's your favorite moment? Mine will always be that filler episode where Chi-Chi hires a tutor to teach Gohan shortly after Goku's death, and she throws his ass out like the garbage he is when he starts disrespecting her man. Shame on you, Mr. Shu. Some assholes would pay some good money for that. Let me know down in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you. It means a lot to me. I'm still shaking down whatever brain cells I have left in this old noggin to shit out the next video soon, which will be on Gojo Satoru's widespread appeal across gender, so I hope you guys are excited. As of recording, this is the current length of the Gojo script, so God have mercy. I am many things, but succinct. Well guys, I've been me, Vicky, and that's it. See ya.